Hello everybody, welcome back to another video on my channel. It's Howley here, and today it's going to be something a little bit different. Blizzard have just announced some patch notes, there's some buffs, there's some nerfs, and they've just literally announced it probably 10 minutes ago at the time of recording this. I want to get right on it, do some analysis on these balance changes, and get it out to you guys as soon as possible so you guys know what's up and can prepare for these nerfs. Coming on May the 18th, which is only a couple of days away. So as I said, there are buffs and nerfs in this balance patch. So we're going to go through the buffs first, and then we're going to go through the nerfs. And honestly, guys, there are a lot of cards that have been changed in this update, which is very, very nice to see. Just want to say that it's very nice to see that Blizzard's really being proactive about these changes and really kind of doing a lot to change the game up and keep it fresh, and definitely doing more than they were before. But yeah, with that being said, let's get into the buffs first and foremost. And there are 4 cards that are being buffed. We have the Outdoor Attendant, which is the Paladin Libram card over here. We have Torrent, which is the Shaman control spell card. Shattered Rumbler, which is the Elemental AoE card from Shaman, and the legendary Lurker Below. And I just wanted to talk about these cards because honestly, you guys probably haven't seen these cards a lot on ladder. Paladin and Shaman are the 2 lowest played decks on ladder right now, the 2 worst performing decks as well, so no surprise that Blizzard wants to buff these classes. Outdoor Attendant is going down to cost 1 mana, but it's also losing 1 attack, so it's now going to be a 1 mana 1/3, which I think it's pretty impactful. Will Librams now be good? It's hard to say, because I think Librams, control Libram is still not going to be, good enough to beat some of the aggressive decks. Paladin just lacks the AoE removal. They only really have Consecration, and that's it. And sometimes, that's a bit too late, only coming out on turn 4. And that's the only removal they have. But this is good change. For Outdoor Attendant, it gives Paladin a 1-drop. 1 mana 1/3s are always good in Hearthstone history. It's always just a great stat line. Being able to get the Libram discounts out there early should be very nice. But I don't think this is going to impact the meta that much, just because I don't think Paladin's that strong otherwise. The second card that's being buffed is Torrent, and it used to cost 5 mana, now it's going to cost 4. So the card reads, deal 8 damage to a minion, costs 3 less if you cast a spell last turn. So previously, if you cast a spell last turn, you were able to cast Torrent for 2 mana on the turn after, but now you're actually able to cast it for 1 mana, which is actually pretty ridiculous if you think about it, because technically now it's going to be a 1 mana deal 8 to a minion, which is insane tempo swing. That's like the best single target removal card that we've seen in Hearthstone in terms of tempo. Obviously, the precondition is still there. You need to cast a spell, but I think this is actually a good change and might push some sort of control Galakrond Shaman into the meta. At least it'll make it definitely a lot better. I'm not sure if it's going to be viable though, but it's definitely a nice change, and I do like to see it. And I just like that they're buffing the weaker classes in general. Shattered Rumbler is another card that could be added into the Control Shaman package, and it's now going to have 1 more attack. It's going to be a 5/6, so it's going to be a 5 mana 5/6, which is a very strong stat line, honestly. But once again, the precondition has to be there. You have to cast a spell last turn, and and the payoff is still not that great. You're dealing 2 damage to all minions. Okay, it's a decent AoE, but turn 5 is a little bit slow. If let's say you play this against a Demon Hunter, you're probably already dead at that point by turn 5. They've already done too much damage with their minions. So it's not that impactful. And yeah, it's great having the attack a little bit higher, but I just, the effect is still the same, and I don't think the effect is that strong. But even if Shaman were to come into the meta, I don't think this card would actually see play. Personally, that's what I think. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Okay, finally, the Lurker Below, and I think this is a pretty substantial buff. Getting +2 health, going from a 6/3 to a 6/5, the same effect. And honestly, this card before was a pretty decent removal card for Shaman. Obviously, Shaman isn't seeing play, but the fact that this now is a 6/5 is pretty decent, right? Because now it can remove a board and be very, very sticky and very difficult for the opponent to actually remove the Lurker Below on the following turn. Because the 3 health is pretty easy to deal with. A lot of cards that deal 3, but not that many cards that deal 5. The opponent might have to expend some more resources on this card, reducing their tempo plays. So I think this is actually probably the biggest change out of these buffs. And the fact that 3 of the cards are Shaman cards might see Shaman increasing play a little bit, and hopefully there will be a Shaman deck that is viable as a result of this, but we'll have to see. But they're very interesting buffs in general. Okay, now we're going to move on to the nerfs, and there are 8 cards being nerfed, and you can actually get a refund on these nerfs, obviously, until the 1st of June, which is quite a long time. So yeah, you can definitely get rid of some of these cards for some dust. But let's go through all of them now and talk about how impactful these nerfs may be. First nerf is Priestess of Fury, going from a 7 mana 6/7 to now a 7 mana 6/5. And honestly, Priestess of Fury wasn't even seeing that much play in Demon Hunter. A lot of people now preferring the more aggressive Demon Hunter list that actually doesn't run Priestess of Fury at all, and just running more early game and more aggression tools. So this nerf will probably just mean that that aggressive Demon Hunter will see play more. People will substitute from the Priestess of Fury build to that aggressive deck for sure, because 5 health now is pretty easy to deal with. For example, like Siamat, there's a lot of cards that deal 5 damage. You don't have to trade as many minions into it. I think this is a pretty substantial nerf, and honestly, it might mean that Priestess of Fury won't be seen in any Demon Hunter list. I think this is a pretty big nerf. Second card's being nerfed, also a Demon Hunter card. It's the Crimson Sigil Runner, which is the 1 mana 2/1 Outcast card that draws you a card, but now it's going to be a 1 mana 1/1. So obviously the effect is still there, so I think the card is still great. It's just a little bit less aggressive. It's got a little bit less attack and much more easy to deal with, basically. 1/1 really isn't that threatening, and I don't know if this is going to affect the play rate of this card. As I said, the effect is still there. You're still able to draw a card. This is still a good top deck, because in the late game, you don't really care if it has 2 attack or 1 attack, really. I mean, sometimes it helps you get there, but you really just want to use it to cycle your deck and be able to get to your stronger cards. So the fact that you're still able to draw a card, I think it's still strong. I think people will experiment by cutting this card initially, but I still think it's a pretty good card, and I still think it will be, see play in a lot of Demon Hunter lists still. Maybe a little bit less than before, but not that impactful of a nerf in my opinion. The third nerf is a Hunter card, Scavenger's Ingenuity, now going to, the buff is now going to be a 2/2 rather than a 3/3, and I think this is a pretty big nerf. Obviously, Scavenger's Ingenuity was used a lot in, buffing Stone Tusk Boar, for example, buffing the Apex Predator in Highlander Hunter, or the Prime Minion, buffing maybe Griffin, maybe Face Stalker. So there were quite a few targets that, really, really benefited from the +3/+3. That is a very big buff for 2 mana, but now it's only going to be a 2/2, and I think that's actually pretty impactful. It just means that your board is going to do 1 less damage with charge. The minions that you get out of this are going to be smaller, going to be more easy for the opponent to deal with. And yeah, I think it's actually going to basically reduce the power level Hunter overall. Does that mean that this card won't see play anymore? I'm not sure about that. I still think it's good. I think it's still a tutor card, right? It still says draw a beast, and I think any card that can tutor something has always been really strong in Hearthstone. And obviously the tempo swing from this is not going to be as huge, but I still think it will see play. I just think it will see less play, honestly. Okay, Shadow Jeweler Hanar is also being nerfed at the Rogue Secret card, and it's going to go from a 1/5 to a 1/4. I think this is actually a pretty big nerf, because now you're going to be less reliably able to make it stick in the early game. Oftentimes with Rogue, you want to be coining this out on 1 or playing it on 2 and hoping it sticks. But just the fact that it has 1 less health now is going to make it much more easy to deal with for a lot of decks. It just doesn't, it's not as good in the early game, basically. But I still think it's a good card, because you can still play it in the late game. It's still 2 mana. The mana hasn't changed, which means you can still play it in the same way as before and get a Chain of Secrets in 1 turn. And yeah, it's a little bit easier to kill now, but the value is still there. So I think it's still fine, but I guess it just reduces the power level of Secret Rogue a little bit. But yeah, I think it's still a really strong card, and I don't think it's going to affect it that much, honestly. This, however, is going to hurt Secret Rogue a lot, because Blackjack Stunner is now nerfed to removing a minion from the board and making it only cost 1 more relative to 2 more from before. And I think this is actually a pretty big nerf for Secret Galakrond Rogue, and it might push a lot of people to switch from Secret Rogue to Stealth Rogue or to Highlander Rogue, because having, it's still a sap effect, right? It's still strong. Like, this card, don't get me wrong, is still strong. I'm not saying it's not going to see play. But the fact that this is getting nerfed as well as the Hanar might just incentivize people to drop the secret package completely from their rogue decks. The fact that it's only costs 1 more, not 2 more, is a pretty big impact. because sometimes you're able to just stun a bunch of minions and make the opponent's hand unplayable because it just costs too much. But now it's going to cost a lot less for the opponent, making it easier for them to, play the minion back. And yeah, this is definitely a hit to Secret Rogue. I don't think it's going to be a massive hit. I think Secret Rogue will probably still be viable. But the fact that both these cards are nerfed, in my opinion, will probably mean that Stealth Rogue will become better after this patch. Okay, another card that's being nerfed is the Imprisoned Scrap Imp, now providing a 2-1 buff instead of a 2-2. And honestly, I think this is also pretty big because Zoo Warlock right now is basically Scrap Imp or bust, right? Scrap Imp is the best card in that deck. It's insane how much your win rate increases when you have Scrap Imp relative to when you don't. So it's literally the powerhouse card of that deck. And the fact that now it gives less health just means that the board from the Zoo, even if they do hit this on turn 2, on turn 1 with the coin, for example, it will mean that their board will be much easier to deal with. Just because all of the minions that get buffed will have 1 less health. It's not just one minion, right? It's all the minions that are going to get buffed from the Scrap Imp are going to have less health, going to have 1 less health, which will just make AoE, make it easier for them to be cleared by AoE, and make it easier for them to be traded into. So I think this is a pretty big nerf as well. And honestly, I think it's a good nerf because I think Scrap Imp was a little bit too polarizing in what it did by just skyrocketing the win rate for Zoo Warlock. Because if you didn't draw this card, your deck just seemed really, really mediocre. And now when you draw this card, it's still going to be insane, right? This is still going to be centerpiece of that deck, but it's going to have less of an impact. And I think that's good in general for the game because you don't really want cards that kind of just are the centerpiece of a deck. Bloodboil Brute is the next card that's going to be nerfed, and it's going to go down to 5 attack, and the health is going to stay the same. Warrior, obviously, probably the best deck right now on ladder, so it's no surprise that this card, along with the Bloodsworn Mercenary, which we're going to talk about in a second, are getting nerfed, because Warrior is just so strong right now. Bloodboil Brute, the effect is still the same. You're still able to get this out a lot of the time for, very, very cheap. If you have like a risky Tipper turn, you're able to get this out maybe for 1 or 2 mana, even 0 mana sometimes. And okay, it has 1 less attack. So it's a little bit less threatening, but I think this card is still going to be fine. It's going to, hinder the Warrior a little bit. But overall, Warrior is still going to be able to do broken things. This is at 5 attack. It's still 5 attack and 8 health. It's still going to be difficult for the opponent to deal with. It's going to be a little bit less pressure, but I don't think it's going to affect the deck that much, honestly, because you're still able to get out for free. And that's what's really strong with this card specifically. It's not really about the stats. The stats are obviously great. But it's the fact that you can get this out for 0 or 1 mana on a turn where you're also doing other broken things. That's where the strength of this card really comes into play. And the last, but not least card that's being nerfed is the Bloodsworn Mercenary. It's the warrior card that allows you to copy a friendly damaged minion. This card is now going down to a 2-2 instead of a 3-3. But once again, I don't think this is actually going to affect the deck that much because the effect is still there, guys. You're still able to copy a damaged minion. And when Warrior used to play this, it wasn't because this was a 3-3, right? Like, it wasn't because the Bloodsworn Mercenary was a good stat line, and it was a solid stat line. And now it's a pretty weak stat line. 3 mana 2-2 is bad. But you're still able to get the effect, right? You're still able to, copy a minion like the Warmore Challenger, for example, that you've rampaged or that you've enraged. And you can still do that for 3 mana. So the fact the mana cost hasn't changed for both of these cards, actually, both the Brute and the Mercenary, I don't think it's going to affect the deck that much, just because you're still able to do those broken things. And yeah, they're a little bit less statted, but honestly, that you don't really care. You don't really care as the warrior about the stats. It's not really about that. And I think it's pretty cool. There's a lot of changes actually, and it's going to be pretty exciting to see how the meta changes after these nerfs. That's a little prediction, little forecast from me. I don't think the meta will actually change that much. I think, Demon Hunter didn't really run Priest of Fury anyway, right? And Crimson Runner is a little bit of a blow, but it's really not that bad. The strength of the deck, Warglaive is not getting touched, Skull of Gul'dan is not getting touched again. So Demon Hunter's still going to be strong. Warrior, still going to be strong, right? These cards, yeah, but Warmore Challenger is still not being touched. The mana cost of these cards are not being touched, which means they're still going to be really, impactful. So I think those two are still going to be the best decks. I don't see a deck that's going to be overtaking that. The one change that I can see happening with these changes is Hunter's going to be a little bit less good because of Scavenger Ingenuity, but I think it's still going to be fine. And I do think Stealth Rogue might overtake Secret Rogue as the #1 Galacron Rogue deck, or maybe even Highlander, but I don't think pure Secret Rogue, which I've played a lot personally, but I think the power level of that will go down relative to its Rogue family members. I think that will be a change that will happen, because the Stealth Rogue was already like pretty much on par with the Secret Rogue. I think Secret Rogue is a little bit better, but with these nerfs, I think Stealth Rogue will definitely take the mantle as the best Galakrond Rogue deck after the nerfs. And with the buffs, well, you know, we can all pray that Paladin and Shaman get to see more play, but honestly, I don't think they're going to be that impactful. I'm definitely going to be trying out Shaman with these 3 buffs. I think these buffs are going to be pretty good. The Paladin buff really isn't going to impact it that much at all, in my opinion. But these 3 Shaman cards, I'm definitely going to be trying it out, especially the Lurker Below. I think the Lurker Below is now very strong, personally. So hopefully it's going to be enough to push a Shaman deck into the meta, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. It's going to be a little short one. Just wanted to go through the balance patch for you guys and keep you up to date on what's happening in Hearthstone. If you guys enjoyed the video and enjoyed this type of content, make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. I'm posting daily Hearthstone content for you guys. But with that said, have a great day, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace out.